All right, so I've got this thing pulled up in my Chrome Inspector, and I've been kind of goofing around with this little hedgehog picture. And it was a circle, and then I made an ellipse, and I had the stuff floating around it properly using the shape outside property. But now I've turned it into a polygon, as you can see here, and I'm just playing around with the values. So even though this little hedgehog picture isn't a polygon, that's okay. I'm gonna show you how you can go ahead and still have a shape that's associated with it. So right here we have the image. So if I hover over it in the HTML view in the inspector, you can see the purple area is defining where the actual shape is going to be so that the text will flow based on that shape. All right, so and the polygon is being created right now by 3 pairs of coordinates to create each vertices. All right, so the vertices, you have to have at least 3 to have an enclosed object. So the first set is going to be 0%, and that could be 0 or 0%, whatever you want to do. And then the second coordinate set or coordinate pair is going to be 0, 100%, and then the last one is 100, and then also 50%. Each coordinate pair is x and y together. All right, so it's the first value of the pair is going to be the x coordinate, and that tells you how far to the right the thing would have to travel, either in percentages, pixels, or whatever the unit measure is, to hit the x-axis, and then the y-axis would be the y value would be how far down it would have to travel to sort of get that coordinate. Sort of like playing that game Battleship, So or like reading a spreadsheet or something, right? Like anything with a data table. So you can see here that the 0, 0, that means that if I hover over this, you can see in the top left corner up here, all right, the top left corner, that's where the first coordinate is. So it literally travels no pixels, no percentages. It just starts right off in the very top, 0, 0. All right. And then the second pair, it's saying that goes 0 to the right because the right is, horizontal is the x-axis. So it moves 0 to the right, and it moves down 100%. So if I hover over this image, you can see here that the bottom, the bottom of where this little triangle is, that means that it's moved 0 on the x-axis, but it moved down 100%. And it's going to be 100% not of the browser window, but 100% of this object, of this image tag, okay? All right, then the last coordinate pair is 100% and 50%. And so again, you can see that's the one off to the right, where it moved 100% to the right. Okay, so it kind of moved from here to here, and then it said, okay, I need to figure out where my y coordinate is, so it moves from like right about here down 50% to about here, and that's where you see that that point. Okay, so that's how a polygon is drawn, and I could add lots and lots and lots of these pairs, and I can have lots of different points, right? Well, that's a lot of geometry to have to figure out with the actual either pixel dimensions or the percentages and so on. So one of the things that you can do, this is really cool, is for Chrome, this guy has made a tool called CSS Shapes, and it's a little extension that you can load into your Google Chrome browser. And what I've done here is I've gone ahead and loaded it, and you can see what happens when you load it is that you'll get this thing over here to the right called Shapes. And the way that it works is that any item that already has some sort of function, like a polygon function or a circle function or ellipse function on the shape outside property, is that you can go ahead and click on shapes while it's currently selected, while that selector is currently selected, the one that has the shape outside property. So if I click on shapes, what I'll get is it tells me the shape information about that particular selector. And we haven't talked about clipping paths yet. that's something that you can do. Like if I had had a picture that wasn't this hedgehog, it was something else, and maybe we'll mess with that. I could actually also add a clipping path, and I'll explain that in just a minute. So if I click on this little arrow, what it does is it goes ahead and it selects the shape. And the other thing it did was that it automatically puts this style attribute, this temporary style attribute up here inside of the HTML tag. And it gives me this inline styling that's going to be dynamic if I want to change something. While this little arrow is yellow, it's going to allow me to do things like move this, right? It's kind of interesting. So, and the other thing it allows me to do also is, in addition to moving existing points, oh, that's not what there we go. I grabbed the point. In addition to moving existing points, so let's say that we want that to start somewhere in that ballpark, right? Is that it also will allow me to add new points if I want. So I could go ahead and like just click on this line and I added a new point. And so I could sit here and be crazy and draw something that's not going to look all that great, you know, in terms of it being an ellipse, but I could do it, right? Or I could do anything else that I wanted to. But you can see that it's kind of cool in that it allows you to do all this stuff just, you know, dynamically, so that you don't have to know how to write all of these figures. And then what you would be able to do if you wanted to keep it, whatever it is that you did, if you wanted to keep all of this, you could just copy this right here and you could paste it into your real CSS style sheet and it'll update it for you. It's pretty cool. You know, so anyway, that's a kind of a neat little tool, and you can play around with it, and it does really amazing stuff for you. Now, the other thing that I said that I was going to talk about is the possibility of having like a clipping path. Well, this doesn't have a clipping path. If I wanted to add a clipping path, I could say, all right, well, I need to add one, and I believe that the clipping path has to be the same as the shape box. So let's just stick with Polygon. And then if I wanted to do a clipping path where, see, I can actually start to make some of this picture disappear. I don't know why I'd want to do it to this picture, but I could do it where, let's just do it where, like, let's say that we try to make this little guy into some sort of weird shape, and it's not, I wouldn't really do this in real life. All right, this isn't what I would choose to do with my picture, I don't think, right? But for the sake of the demonstration, you know, we could add this clipping path here, and now we've got this clipping path. And now if I go back to the polygon, I can change my polygon up, right? And I can modify it so that it has a better flow and it actually sort of matches that clipping path. And if I wanted to get rid of that, I could, because it's unnecessary. I just need to be able to create a straight line. And it doesn't let you like click and get rid of it. So what you would have to do is you'd have to go and change it and just remember which of these it is and remove it later. But for right now, let's just do this. This is kind of neat. All right. And then let's move this guy all the way out here, I guess. And then we'll move this one right here. And then we can kind of keep that shape. And so the other thing I could do is I could actually use that extra one like this, I guess, if I really wanted to kind of push the boundary. Okay, and so you can see now that it still works pretty well, right? And so what I could do is I could take all of this data and I could put that in my style sheet, and I could also go ahead and add the clip path as well to my style sheet, and then I would get something that looked like that. And for those of you who might be a little bit concerned and say, wow, this seems so complicated, and I'm really afraid that if I use this, you know, what would that look like in non-supporting browsers like Internet Explorer or Firefox? Well, we can always go back over here to styles, and we can basically completely take these styles off. like this. And then you notice that I took them off down here, but they're still being displayed because they're up here as inline style. So if I were to take that, and make sure that when you do this, you might, lose your stuff if it mattered to you. So you'd want to put it in your clipboard as a cut, so you could always paste it back if necessary. So I'm going to take that, and I'm just going to cut it and click away. And that's what it would look like in Firefox or Internet Explorer right there. Okay, it's still not bad. It's fine. And this is really just a way for you to do some of the things that you kind of used to do anyway, and do something a little bit more interesting with them, so that other people who aren't in the non-supporting browsers, they can see something a little bit more interesting. And ideally, I wouldn't have this little hedgehog if, I wouldn't have it as a circular thing if I was going to do that weird polygon shape. It would be a square image, so that probably it'd be a square image, so that this would look nicer, so that it would, this would flow around it a little bit better. And then I would just put my clipping path on top of the image, so I could also clip it. Anyway, that's the end of the demo.